Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 162 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
I'm doing good, man. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah?
I was trying to figure out what I was going to say.
Yeah.
I've been getting a little antsy.
Okay.
A little more antsy than I have been the past 3 or 4 weeks.
You want to get out of this place.
Get out and do something, sit around with a group of people, maybe just, but I'm sure everybody's getting that way a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
And I can't complain because I have my family here and, I have people to talk to every day.
Yeah, you do.
There are quite a few people that don't.
No.
And, if you're in an apartment by yourself,
go crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it's got to be even tougher.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. We have had an amazing amount of support recently, and we just can't thank everyone enough.
No, it's definitely very much appreciated.
So let's start off with our new Patreon supporters. We had Alyssa Copeland.
Hey, Alyssa.
Robin Biondo.
Hey, Biondo.
Brendan McLaughlin.
What's going on, McLaughlin?
Shoop.
What's up, Shoop Shoop?
Jojo Rossiter.
Hey, Jojo.
Cassidy.
Hey, Cassidy.
Alicia Wright.
Hey, thanks, Alicia.
Izzy Swanda.
Ah, the old Izzy Swanda.
The old Izzy Swanda.
Yeah.
Kristen Bangdahl.
Hey, Bangdahl.
Dewana Dean.
What's going on, Dewana?
Ronan Kai.
Hey, Rona.
Rye McAloon.
Thanks, Mako.
Some just very cool,
names,
interesting names that you don't hear a lot of.
Yeah.
Nancy Niven.
Hey, Nancy.
Diana P.
What's going on, Diana?
Lakin Dye.
Hey, Lakin.
Joe Fugate.
What's happening, Fugate?
Margaret Hip.
Thanks, Margaret.
Gavin Clark.
Hey, Gavin.
Nessa Faylor.
Hey, Nessa.
Elizabeth Miller.
Appreciate it, Elizabeth.
Amber F.
What's going on, Amber?
Kathleen Lenz.
Hey, Kathleen.
Kaylee. Katie Breen.
Hey, Katie.
Kelly Buffoni.
What's going on, Buffoni?
And last but not least, Jamie Knox.
Well, thank you, Jamie.
So big shout out to all our new Patreon supporters. And then Gibbs, if we go back into the vault, this week we selected Beverly Salmon.
Yeah.
Or Salmon.
Salmon.
I'm just not sure which one.
Beverly.
Yeah. But been with us a long time, and we really appreciate that.
We really do.
We had some amazing PayPal donations as well. We had Anna Vaughn, and then I think she came back later and corrected it.
Oh.
Made another donation.
Wow.
And changed the name to Anna Solaz Vaughn.
Well, thank you, Anna, and Anna again.
Yeah, she could have just sent me an email and said, hey, when you announce it, can you announce it this way? But no, she made 2 donations.
Well, definitely appreciate that.
Gwen Springer.
Hey, Gwen.
And Mary Ashley. So,
what's going on, Mary?
Thank you, everyone,
absolutely.
so much for helping out the podcast. Gibbs, right now we have an episode out on True Crime All the Time. We're talking about a love triangle that occurred out in Colorado that turned deadly.
Yeah.
The murder of Heather Garris, was married to this police officer named Ignacio Garris, who had an affair with a woman named Shauna Nelson. And man, twists and turns.
It got bad.
It got bad real quick.
Yeah.
Things went south. I think what's interesting about this case is what comes out at trial. There's a lot of trial testimony. We've got some good audio. So definitely check that out. All right, buddy. Are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
Are you ready? Are you really ready?
I am really ready.
All right.
I have been ready for days to sit here in the studio with you and record. I told you I've been getting
the anticipation.
Antsy.
Yeah.
So we're headed back to the 1980s for this episode. It was on July 10th, 1981, when Ken McElroy and his wife Trina drove into the small farm town of Skidmore, Missouri for Ken's court date. But the court date was postponed, and it worked out in his favor. It was for his benefit, so good for him. So what happened was Ken and Trina walked over to the local tavern. They ordered a beer each to celebrate, because this was kind of a good thing for Ken.
Yeah, so why not drink a couple beers and, feel good about it.
Celebrate good times. Come on.
I knew you were going to sing. I knew you wanted to.
When Ken and Trina were finished drinking their beer, they got up and they walked out to his truck. Gibbs, there was a huge amount of people in town that day, an abnormally large amount of people.
Yeah, there was.
And all these people were drifting around the parking lot, and specifically the area where Ken's truck was parked. So once Ken and Trina got inside the truck, suddenly out of nowhere, 3 gunshots were heard, and Ken was dead. He was shot in the head and died.
Yeah, just like that.
Trina wasn't hit, and she was able to get out of the truck and run away to safety.
Yeah, she ran off and dove into some nearby bank.
But there is a ton to this case, right? That's what happened. We know that's what happened. So before we dive into some of the really interesting twists and turns, we need to kind of look a little into Ken's early years. Ken Rex McElroy was born on June 1st, 1934, to Anthony and Mabel McElroy in Kansas City, Missouri. He was the second youngest of 16 children.
That's a lot of mouths to feed, man.
16.
Yeah. Well, if you're going to run a farm, I guess maybe that's what you have all those kids for. Get out there and pick those rocks up out of that field. I've done that before with a farm family. That's their weekend fun. Get out there, take your 5-gallon bucket and bring it back with as many rocks as you can.
So what, they just invited you over to help with the gathering of the rocks?
Yeah, like it's going to be a fun event.
Come on over. We're going to have fun. Here's a bucket. Get to work.
Yeah.
It is a ton, though. 16.
Yeah, that's a lot of kids.
I've always felt my 2 were a handful.
And we're plenty?
We're plenty. I literally cannot imagine having 16 kids. I just don't know how anyone would have the energy, the time, the patience.
When does it end?
No, I mean, it doesn't end.
Yeah, that's like having a kid, every year for the next 16 years, and then you stop, and you still have to go through all those years. I mean, I'll be like 90 years old when the
when the last one's graduating.
Yeah,
I really like the way you had to do that math in your head.
It was tough.
Of how many years it would take to have one each year to reach 16.
It was not easy.
The family eventually settled down on a farm in Skidmore, Missouri. And we're talking about a very small town.
Oh, really small, yeah.
I mean, even in 81, when we know Ken was killed, the population of Skidmore was like 400, give or take.
That's a small town, man.
It's a very small town. Skidmore is located in Nottoway County. At a very young age, Ken was riding in the family hay wagon as it was being pulled across the farm, and somehow he fell out of it, right? Accidents happen. We know that all the time. But he hit his head in this fall, and he hit it really hard.
Well, so hard they had to put a steel plate in his head.
Right. He had to go into surgery. They inserted a steel plate. Now, he was a kid, so I'm not going to make the Christmas Vacation jokes about using the microwave, about Eddie using the microwave. Ken's father had him working at the crack of dawn. And I'm assuming it was not just him. I think a lot of the kids were working at the crack of dawn.
I would imagine so.
And then they would head off to school. And then as soon as school was over, Ken had to come home and work again. And I'm sure many of the other children did as well. But here's the thing about Ken. He didn't like school. And Gibbs, he really didn't like other kids all that much either.
No, he really wasn't a very friendly person. He just didn't like anybody.
Yeah, he wasn't social. And he felt like school was just a big waste of time.
Sure.
Hey, what am I going to do? I'm on the farm. I'm probably going to continue to be on the farm. Why do I need to know
how to do English?
How to do English or perform mathematical equations? I like it. How to do English.
I know. People were like just quincing. Is that the word? That's it.
No.
But leave it in there anyway, aren't you?
You should go back.
I should go back for sure.
I really feel like a documentary, a reality series, a Billy Madison type with you.
Yeah.
Where you go back and do
gosh.
like from grades maybe 1 or 2 on would be hilarious.
I think it's good that you think I need to go back all the way to the first grade. Well, probably today classrooms.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Probably maybe start off in kindergarten.
Yeah,
Okay.
because I see some of my daughter's homework that's a freshman in high school, and I'm like, I don't know what that is.
Oh, no.
Don't ask me for help because I have no idea what that is.
Yeah, it's crazy on what kind of stuff they do now.
The one thing about Ken, right, and this happens, I think, to a lot of kids working on the farm, he grew big. I mean, he was husky.
Yeah.
We used to call it farm strong.
Yeah.
Because the town that I grew up in was a little bit rural back then. And you just had these kids that were just stronger than everybody else because they were tossing bales of hay.
Oh, man.
They were doing work that required a lot of muscle.
They had those big forearms, hands. Yeah.
Yeah,
They're strong.
Ken never grew out of that. I mean, at the time of his death, he was 5'10", 265.
It's a stocky boy.
Yeah, with big arms, big hands. He was a strong guy. By the time Ken turned 15, he decided, you know what? I'm done with school. And he dropped out.
I don't think his parents were too upset because that just meant that he could be on the farm full time.
Yeah, they probably weren't.
Yeah.
Now, around town, you're going to get that reputation of dropping out, not even finishing the 8th grade.
Yeah.
But I don't think that was the reputation that really was the biggest thing about Ken. The biggest reputation he had was that he was just a mean SOB.
Exactly. That was his reputation straight across.
And he was mean to pretty much everybody. It seemed like kids, adults, older than him. It didn't really matter. From a very early age, he was disrespectful. He was mean. He was a bully. It's just the kind of kid he was.
Yeah, he definitely wasn't going to take crap off of anybody. And I think he felt you better take his crap, though.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I get the feeling that it was more than, hey, I'm not going to take anything off of anybody. To me, that means if you come at me, I'm not going to back down. I'm sure that was part of it. But I also see him as somewhat of a bully as well, where he's dishing it out, not just defending himself or standing up for himself. Now, there were some people that thought it was related to his head injuries or maybe related to the way that he was raised. I mean, his dad was pretty tough on everyone, very strict.
Well, with 16 kids in the house, you got to have some kind of structure.
Yeah. I don't know how strict it was, but you're right about that. If you don't have any structure, it would just be Animal House anarchy.
Yeah, I can't imagine. Just dinner time alone. What kind of mess that would be.
So we mentioned it, right? Ken, over time, became known as the local town bully. He really was, Gibbs, I think, seen by most as just a bad guy. He allegedly had stolen cattle from many of the local ranchers. He stole a lot of things: grain feed, hogs, fuel. He robbed houses. As time went on, he developed quite a rap sheet.
He really did.
Intimidation of a witness, assault, arson, attempted murder, child molestation, statutory rape. I mean, these are very serious things that just seem to escalate as time goes on. I think in total, he had over 24 charges. That's a lot.
That is a lot.
I've never had one, knock on wood.
Well, you looking? I'm not going to say how many I'm not going to go there.
Even for you, 24 plus is a lot.
Is a lot, yeah.
It really is for anybody to catch that many charges. So when you look at the late 60s through Ken's death in 1981, his name was in the local papers quite a bit.
Oh my gosh. Just researching this case alone, it was like, is he not going to be in this one? That's how I was like, well, maybe he won't be in this year's papers in that town.
Well, and that's the thing, right? It wasn't like any of it was any good. These were all for things that you would not want to be associated with.
Yeah.
They weren't coming to his house to do an article on him as
Great. Hey,
humanitarian of the year.
Great farming by Ken.
Yeah. No. Or he saved a child from, the pond that was frozen over.
Right.
That's not the type of stories that were written. The thing about Ken, though, and we see this in way too many cases, he was able to find a way out of, these charges time after time.
Yeah.
Now, I think a lot of the time it was because people were scared of him.
Oh, he would definitely try to intimidate them.
Witnesses.
Yeah, he would intimidate the victims. He didn't care. He would go after any and everybody if he could make the case go away.
And a lot of times that's what happened.
Yeah.
These people got scared. They recanted their accounts of the events, or they just simply said, you know what? We don't want to go through with this. We're dropping the charges. We don't want to press charges anymore because we don't want to deal with this guy.
I mean, he would even try to intimidate the jurors because back then the jurors' names were in the paper.
So, ahead of time, which I thought was very strange, and it's something I never knew.
Yeah.
I was not aware of that until researching this case.
And I was surprised too when I saw that. I thought, wow, okay. Well, I'm glad they don't do that today.
Yeah. Well, there's a reason they don't do that. But, he would harass jurors. He would follow them around. He would just sit in his truck and stalk them.
Yeah.
But he wouldn't just do that. He had his trusty M1 Grand rifle with him in the truck. Sometimes he would point it at people. Sometimes he would act like maybe he was sighting it in, but that's scary.
It is scary.
And if he didn't have it in his hands, Ken was known to have that rifle in his gun rack at all times.
Yeah, he always had a gun with him. He was never going to be without a gun in his reach.
And I'm not sure what the law was like in this town back in the day, because, in some of the reports, Gibbs, it said he would just follow these people into places, bars, restaurants with his rifle.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he would carry his rifle or his shotgun into bars and restaurants all the time.
So I think the point we're trying to make is that Ken McElroy was a scary guy. And, even the toughest people in town were afraid of Ken.
Well, he wasn't afraid of anybody. So if 4 other people wanted to come at him, okay, I guess we're going to do this, aren't we?
And that's a scary guy.
Yeah.
Somebody that's not afraid to take on all comers. That's not the kind of guy you want to tick off or, get on his bad side.
And it's not like he had Jack Reacher. Rich, that guy. Remember that Tom Cruise played him? Jack Reacher.
Did you say Richard?
I did. I said Richard.
Yeah, Jack Reacher.
Yeah. It's not like he had skills like that guy, but he didn't care. He was going to scrap with anybody if he had to, if he couldn't shoot you first. That was his thing, right? If he could point that gun at you, he would not have a problem shooting it.
Ken, over the years, was married 4 times, including to his wife, Trina. He had 15 kids of his own. Between the 4 wives, 3 of those kids were with his 4th wife, Trina. And I think even how the 2 of them got married, that's an interesting story in and of itself.
Oh, it really is.
So while Ken was married to his 3rd wife, he allegedly started messing around with a 15-year-old girl named Trina without her parents' knowledge.
Right.
She became pregnant, and then obviously her parents found out. They pressed charges against Ken for child molestation and statutory rape. This was in June of 1973. Trina gave birth to their first child at 16 years old. Meanwhile, Ken's trial is coming up. So just 3 days before the trial was getting ready to start, Ken divorced his 3rd wife. Then Trina's parents' house burnt down, and it was determined to be arson. Not only that, somebody shot and killed their family dog.
So it's like someone sending a message.
Well, the way that I understand it, Gibbs, is that everyone in town knew who had done all of this.
Right.
It was Ken McElroy.
Sure.
because who else had something against these people that are trying to put him in jail for child molestation and statutory rape?
Right.
It's Ken McElroy.
Yeah.
But even though people knew it, because everybody was so afraid of him, they weren't willing to say it. They weren't willing to point the finger. Nobody wanted to bring it up.
They didn't want their house to be next.
No. And so the day after all of this went down, Trina's parents signed a consent form allowing Trina to marry Ken.
Yeah. And he doesn't waste any time.
No, the very next day they got married. They went to the next county over and they had the justice of the peace marry them.
Very smart guy.
Yeah, I hate to say you have to give him credit because none of the things that he's doing are good, but you can't say that these are not smart things to do in his situation.
Yeah, very calculated for sure.
And the fact that all of it happened within this 3-day period before the trial was about ready to start. Hell, I can't even make certain decisions in 3 days. This guy did all of this stuff in 3 days and he got it done. And the big thing, obviously, is because Trina's parents signed the consent form and they got married, they could no longer press charges. And Trina couldn't testify against Ken, her husband. So the prosecutor had no choice but to dismiss the case. And I think the way that the locals looked at it was that, okay, here's just another time, like so many other times through the years that Ken got away with a crime. No justice was served because he figured out a way through intimidation, through criminal acts to get out of it. It's like I'm getting out of one criminal act by committing another.
Yeah.
Is basically what he did.
So he doesn't have to pay for the initial charges, and then they don't ever go after him for the arson because nobody is going to say that had to be him. They're just going to go ahead and go, oh, okay, move on.
Yeah, let's just move on. So we talked about the fact that Trina gave birth to their first child at 16 years old. After the baby was born, the baby was placed with a foster home. All of this happened before Ken's trial was supposed to take place.
Right.
But then after they got married, they wanted the baby back.
Sure.
But they were denied. And that's when Ken stepped in and did what Ken always did,
right,
which was figure out a way to intimidate whoever was involved in a situation so that he could get what he wanted.
And he had some balls on him.
Yeah, you'd have to admit that he did.
Yeah.
Now, he had balls, he had chutzpah, he had no common sense. I mean, I don't know. You can make a couple of different determinations, but he ended up going to the foster parents and basically saying, hey, I know where your daughter goes to school.
Yeah. I know what bus she rides, when she gets picked up, when she gets dropped off.
So he said, if you don't give me my daughter back, I'm going to grab your daughter.
Yeah.
And then you're going to be forced to trade with me.
That's right. Daughter for daughter.
Now, they went to police.
Sure.
And Ken was charged with intimidation, but nothing ever came from it. And like it always seemed to happen, Ken got his way, right? He and Trina got their daughter back from the foster program. And then, like we talked about it, later on, they would go on to have 2 more children. Over the next 2 years, Ken got into more trouble.
Shocker.
With both people in town and with the law. But again, he always managed to get out of it, either through intimidation. Sometimes he would pay people off if he had the money, but I don't know, Gibbs. It seems like a lot of times he didn't need to do that because he would figure out a way to get out of it for free. And he always boasted around town about how much money he had from selling livestock and other projects that he worked on. It seems like he always had a huge wad of cash in his pocket. And these weren't ones, right? Like what you normally carry around in your pocket.
I do. I always carry a wad of ones and I put a 5 on the outside.
Well, we know why you like a lot of ones, but that's something
okay.
totally different.
Yeah.
His wad consisted of $100 bills. I mean, he literally walked around with a bunch of money, and he wasn't shy about showing it off and telling people.
Well, he did like to show his wad off.
Yeah, it seemed like he did. He would tell bartenders, waitresses that he had suitcases filled with cash at home.
Again, I mean, he probably did, but who was going to go to his place and try to steal from him?
Well, that's the thing, right? Most people, even if you, for whatever reason, decided to keep a bunch of money at your house, you wouldn't go around town bragging about it for the fear that somebody's going to come and rob you.
Right.
Ken McElroy didn't have that fear.
No.
Because to most people, he was the boogeyman.
Yeah.
Nobody steals from the boogeyman.
People were afraid to even look in his direction. So,
but here's the thing, all of this talk and all of this boasting about how much money he had, it rubbed people in town the wrong way.
Well, sure.
Because they knew he really had not made all of this money legally.
Right.
He had stolen most of the livestock that he sold to get this money.
Yeah, that was their cows or their hogs that he sold.
Yeah.
They're sitting there not having anything, and he's whooping these $100 bills like nothing.
So basically, he's flashing what should have been some of these people's cash.
Yeah.
And rubbing it in their noses. And they didn't like that. Then on July 26, 1976, this was around 5:30 p.m., a local farmer by the name of Romaine Henry was shot twice by a shotgun on his own property. He didn't die, and he was able to later tell the sheriff that he was at home and he heard someone shooting a shotgun out on some part of his land. So he went out to investigate.
Like anybody would do.
I don't know if anybody would go out to see who's firing a shotgun.
Well, farmers, they're gonna look.
Right, because
who's on my property shooting a gun?
They're worried that people are maybe shooting their livestock or something like that. Here in the neighborhood that I live in.
Yeah, you wouldn't do that.
I don't think most people would just run out to find out who's firing off a weapon.
No, you'd be out there.
I'd be out there, but that's just me. So this guy goes out, and when he gets to the area, he sees Ken McElroy sitting in his pickup truck. So Henry said he went up to approach him.
Sure.
And when he did, Ken swung open the door of the truck and he just opened fire with his shotgun right into Henry's stomach.
Yeah. Took one right there in the gut.
And then he said Ken fired a second shot that grazed his head. Luckily, this guy was able to run back to his truck, make it back to his house, and his wife drove him to the hospital. He lived.
That's impressive to take a 12 gauge to your gut and still survive.
Well, I'm sure it didn't feel good at all.
Oh, I probably did not.
Not to mention the fact that you took one that grazed off your head.
Yeah, that can't be good either.
Even if it grazes, it's not going to feel good.
No. It's going to have a little sting to it.
It's just a flesh wound.
Just a flesh wound.
So the sheriff was looking for Ken, but Ken had fled the area. A few days later, Ken's attorney negotiated his arrest. Ken was charged with assault with the intent to kill, and they released him on a $20,000 bond. Now, he claimed he was never there. He did not shoot Romaine Henry. He said at that time he was at home overseeing a construction project.
Yeah, I don't know who Mr. Henry saw. It wasn't me. That wasn't me and my shotgun.
But he's going to go to trial. And it started in August of 1977. And during this trial, he did admit that he was on that day over by the Romaine farm. But he said it was much earlier in the day. And then later he had a drink at a nearby tavern. He said he left the tavern just before 5 p.m. so that he could get home to check on this construction project. McElroy said he remembered getting home right around 5 because the two workers were packing up to leave just like they did every day at 5 o'clock.
Well, if he said it, then it's got to be true.
Well, sure, because he's an honorable, trustworthy guy.
Yeah. And I'm sure those two guys that were working for him, there would be no reason why they would not be honest about the time they were there or not there.
No. Number one, he's paying them. And number two, they were probably scared of him just like everybody else was. Ken went on to say that he had the two guys working for him help him repair the tailgate on his truck. That took about 30 minutes. He took care of some other things at the farm. And by that time, it was around 6 p.m.
Yeah.
Before he headed out again. And this was important because this was well past the time that Romaine Henry was shot. Now, Henry told the jury what occurred that day and how he remembered looking at his watch once he got home and it said 5:35 p.m. He also said, number one, it was Ken who was there and shot me, but that Ken also yelled while he shot him that he didn't want to see Henry driving around his farm anymore.
Yeah. I don't know why you're stalking my farm. Why are you driving around my area for?
Yeah, he accused him of snooping. He says, stop snooping around.
Well, I'm pretty sure the road that anybody is on around that farm is public. So, and it's funny that he's saying this
while he's on his land.
Yeah.
Firing a shotgun at
exactly. And it's also the guy that likes to sit in front of people's homes to intimidate them all the time.
With the gun.
Yeah.
But like you said, Gibbs, the two construction workers were able to provide Ken with an alibi. Now, the timelines that they gave during the trial, they varied a little bit, both from what Ken said and even each other.
Yeah.
They didn't all have their story straight. On Monday, August 8th, it took the jury only about 45 minutes to come back with a not guilty verdict. The trial only lasted like 7 hours.
Yeah.
Quick. So it was very quick. And it didn't take them long to say, nope, we don't think it was him. Now, what was excluded from trial, what was not allowed to be introduced was the fact that Ken would park in front of the Henry house almost every day.
Yeah.
Leading up to this trial with his gun in his truck, trying to intimidate him.
Yeah, wanting them to drop the charges.
It was also heavily rumored that the two construction workers gave the alibi for Ken because they knew if they didn't, something bad could happen to either them or their family.
Yeah. Yeah, they were really concerned.
So once again, as had happened many times, you had this small town of Skidmore feeling like, man, this guy has gotten away with another crime.
Yeah, he tried to murder Mr. Henry. And here he is, back in town. Nothing happened to him.
Over the next few years, Ken McElroy was in and out of the courts for a bunch of different crimes, including shooting his shotgun off in a public place, loitering around businesses with his rifle or shotgun. He had a bunch more theft allegations, but none of it mattered, really, when it all came down to it, because nothing ever happened to him.
No, he was like the mob up in New York, Teflon. Nothing stuck.
The Teflon Don?
Yeah.
But the reason why we keep talking about all of this, right, is because everyone in town knows what this guy's doing. They know that he keeps getting away with things that he shouldn't get away with.
Right.
And they've seen it time and time again over a long period of time. People start to get really upset about it.
Yeah.
Now, there's nothing they can do.
No.
But it's going to come into play big time down the road.
Clearly with him, the law is not working.
No justice is ever served against this guy. And we mentioned it, right? Most people in the community were afraid of him because whenever he did something to someone, he would basically say, you know what? Go ahead and call the police. It's pretty much as though he knew he would figure a way out of whatever charge was going to come his way. like we mentioned, either through intimidation, bribery, whatever he had to do.
It's hard to deal with somebody that's not afraid of anything. If they're willing to take that risk and really mean that, like, I don't care. If you want to call here, I'll call them right now. Want me to call them? That time person, man, it's hard to win against somebody.
Well,
like
no,
that.
those are scary individuals. Anybody that's not afraid of any type of consequences.
Right.
Those are scary people because they're not thinking the way that most of us think, right? Most of us don't do certain things because we don't want to face the consequences of our actions. For some people, that's all that really keeps them from doing certain things. Some people are just good by nature and they're like, even if there were no consequences, I wouldn't do this, or this.
Right.
But for a lot of people, it's the threat of either going to jail or this or that keeps them from doing really bad things.
There's normally some type of balance and check system going on.
Or checks and balances.
That too.
However you want to look at it.
Sometimes you got to do it in reverse, man.
But Ken just never stopped, right? He would drive through town late at night, sometimes discharging his rifle or shotgun in the air, I guess just for shits and giggles. I don't know. Sometimes he would just stare at people, give them like creepy stares.
I think that's just another part of intimidation, right? Just to keep the town in check.
Well, you got to keep your thug bully image up.
Yeah.
So you don't want too much time to go by without doing something that keeps everybody on their toes, letting them know, hey, I'm still the guy to be feared. In June of 1980, Ken and one of his daughters, they were inside the local grocery store in town getting some items. As he normally did, Ken had one of his guns with him.
Yeah.
On that day, he had his M1 rifle and he had a bayonet attached to it.
It's a whole nother level right there, attaching that bad boy.
Strange enough to see somebody walking around with an M1 rifle.
Yeah.
But with the full long bayonet attached to it too.
It's a little strange.
That is a little strange. So they're in this grocery store. Ken had just cashed out. And the owner of the store, guy named Ernest Bowenkamp, he saw Ken's daughter put a candy bar in her pocket. So he called her out and said, hey, you need to put that back on the shelf. Well, Ken didn't like that.
No.
He didn't like someone telling his daughter what she should do. And he definitely didn't like the fact that Bo had accused her of stealing.
Didn't sit well with him.
No. So Ken threatened him with his gun, didn't shoot him, but left the store. But over the next few weeks, I think Gibbs, it festered with Ken McElroy, right? This event that transpired in the grocery store.
Yeah.
It gnawed at him and it just kind of got worse and worse. He started to harass the Bowenkamp family. And then on July 8th, Ken walked back into the store, walked right up to Bo, raised his shotgun, and fired a shot, hitting Bo right in his neck.
Just like that.
And people were so shocked. I mean, like the store clerk could not believe that she just saw a man walk in and shoot the store owner. Bo's wife was there.
Yeah.
And could not believe what had happened. Not just that a person would come in and shoot and try to kill the store owner, but what it was over.
Yeah.
The perceived slight of someone accusing your daughter of stealing a candy bar, which we're pretty sure she did by all accounts.
Yeah.
She had the candy bar.
But the fact that it was weeks ago and it's built up to that point that you felt the only way I'm going to feel better about this is if I go in there and kill him.
Well, I think it tells you a lot about this guy. And I think that's what we're trying to do with this episode, right? We're building up to the day that Ken McElroy is murdered. And to do that, you have to tell the story of Ken McElroy and what the other people in town thought of him. And you do that through all of these events that transpired over a number of years. Ken fled the scene. But everybody knew who it was.
Yeah.
I mean, he had been seen by multiple people. So as had happened before, he got his attorney to once again work out his surrender to the sheriff. He was arrested and charged with attempted murder. After all of this came out, a waitress from the local tavern came forward to tell the sheriff that just days after this first incident happened at the grocery store, she heard Ken say that he was going to shoot and kill this store owner. But according to her, this was the type of thing that Ken said all the time.
Yeah, if you crossed him that day,
Yeah.
he was probably in there telling her, I'm going to kill such and such for what they did to me today.
Right. This guy just cut me off, or
Yeah.
this guy crossed against the light. Man, I'm going to kill that SOB.
Yeah, his day's coming.
So I'm sure what she's saying is, when I first heard it, I really didn't think too much about it because, to be honest with you, I heard it quite a bit.
Yeah.
But after he did shoot him, I felt like I needed to come forward and say something. So Ken was out on bond awaiting his trial.
There's no way that set well with the locals. He just shot and tried to kill your grocery store owner. Now he's sitting in the local tavern. He's driving around town. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. And when you say your local grocery store owner, it really was that. There was only one grocery store in town. You know, it's one of the reasons why we talked about how small this town was. Everybody knew each other.
Yeah.
The town was smaller than many graduating high school classes.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So there was one grocery store in town. There was one grocery store owner. Everybody knew this guy. This is where they bought their groceries. I think you're absolutely right. It didn't sit well with the town that, okay, he's out on bond, but I'll take it a step further. We're afraid he's probably going to get off of this, as he had done so many other times. But that didn't happen, because on June 26, 1981, he was found guilty at trial. And obviously this was a very rare thing. He was convicted of shooting Bo Bowerkamp with a shotgun, and he received a 2-year sentence. Okay, that doesn't seem like a whole lot for attempted murder.
No.
And a rap sheet as long as this guy had. Now, he didn't have convictions, though, as far as I know, because he'd gotten off all the time.
So it's like they never happened. If you didn't get convicted, it didn't happen.
His defense attorney filed an appeal that same day, and Ken was released after posting a $40,000 bond. And right away, he walked out of court, grabbed his M1 rifle with the bayonet attached from his truck, and he walked right into the B&G Tavern to have a drink.
Just like that, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, he's found guilty, supposed to serve 2 years, but because they appeal, they're going to allow him to sit at home until his appeal's heard.
Or in a tavern with
a loaded rifle.
M1 rifle. So he's in this tavern, and he told the bartender, he said, you know what? I've been fighting the legal system since I was 13. Now I'm 50 years old, and this was the first time I've lost. He wasn't happy, obviously.
Right.
While Bo was in the hospital, the local preacher went to visit him, and Ken found this out. And apparently he went to the preacher and said, hey, if you visit Bo again, you'll be next on my list.
Yeah. Don't you be doing that.
He threatened the preacher.
Yeah. He didn't care who he went up against. He'll threaten anybody.
And I guess he was in the bar just constantly making threats about how he was going to take care of Bo once and for all. And I think it was these threats in the bar about, trying to kill Bo that caused some of the local leaders in town to approach the sheriff and basically ask, what can be done?
Right.
Something has to be done about this guy. They were tired of his threats. The local sheriff said, hey, you know what? Keep an eye on him. See if anything develops. The sheriff's office was 15 minutes away. So it wasn't like they could really be in town 24/7, keeping an eye on Ken McElroy.
But hey, guys, if you see anything, call us. and we'll see if we can get somebody, dispatched over here
before he
does anything.
Does anything bad.
Yeah. You got to remember, in this town during that time, even the authorities were afraid of Ken. They didn't want to mess with him either.
No, I don't think anybody did. But the one person that did step up was the prosecutor, right? After hearing all this, they decided to file to have Ken's bond rejected, which meant Ken would have had to sit in jail until his appeal was heard. On July 10th, 1981, a hearing was set about this issue of revoking his bond. And I think the main issue for it was very clear, right? This guy was walking around town with a loaded firearm, making threats, and specifically making threats against the person that he had already tried to kill.
Right. That's not good.
No, this guy should not be out walking the streets. And I think the community they were very hopeful that, okay, today's going to be the day.
Yeah.
This man is finally going to be locked up.
Goodbye, Ken.
Goodbye, Ken. And everyone in town can have a little bit of peace of mind finally.
Yeah. For a few years, things will get calm around here.
And it's this hearing that drew about 60 locals into town to hear the verdict. So they were assuming that the bond was going to be revoked, and then they were all going to celebrate.
Yeah.
But the crowd quickly got wind that the hearing was postponed by something that Ken and his attorney pulled.
Right.
Right. And that's what they assumed. This guy had figured out another way to weasel out of what he had coming to him. They heard that Ken and his wife, Trina, were in the tavern having some drinks to celebrate the postponement. So the majority of these locals that had come in, they walked to the Legion Hall so that they could figure out, okay, what do we have to do to get Ken off the street and to protect ourselves?
Yeah.
Because somebody has got to put a stop to this. And the legal system doesn't seem as though they are able to do it. They haven't been able to do it so far.
Right.
We got to take matters into our own hands.
Yeah, because he's almost killed two of us, right, that we know of.
And he's threatening to finish off Bo.
Right. And we just can't continue to live like this in our own community.
Eventually, all these people decided to walk up to the B&G Tavern, and some went inside while some decided to stand out front, knowing full well, eventually Ken would finish his beers and he would come outside. I think they were fed up, Gibbs, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
They were finally ready to confront this guy and let him know how they felt. So once Ken and Trina finished their beers, they got up, they walked outside. There was all these people, right? Essentially staring at Ken.
Yeah.
Glaring at Ken as he walked to his truck, but no one said anything. They just stared at him.
No words were uttered.
Again, probably too afraid to verbally confront him.
Right.
And then the next thing that happened was 3 gunshots rang out. And as we mentioned up front, Ken was shot in the head and he lay there dying. Trina bolted from the truck and she ran to safety. So the sheriff and some deputies, they show up and they're questioning all these people that are outside the tavern. Not one person claimed to have seen who pulled the trigger and fired the shots that killed Ken. And after these people were questioned, they kind of just wandered off.
Yeah.
Went back to their houses or whatever. 2 weeks later, Trina told the grand jury she knew who it was that shot her husband. And she actually gave the grand jury the person's name, but nothing ever came from it. The grand jury concluded that Ken McElroy was killed by an unknown person or persons. So it's kind of a twist of irony.
Yeah.
Right? Ken had gotten away with so many things against the people in town for many years. Now all of a sudden he's killed, and whoever it was that killed him got away with it. The grand jury didn't indict anyone.
justice wasn't served on him all those times. Justice won't be served on these people.
Later on, a neighboring county investigated the murder. They had a grand jury as well, but no one was ever indicted from that either. Basically, no one in the community was talking.
No, nobody was going to say a word.
So Trina might have known who killed her husband, but nobody in town was going to come forward and confirm it. That's my theory. Now, when these different agencies looked into the investigation, they knew that 3 shots were fired. 2 of the shots hit Ken in the head, but they figured out that the 2 bullets that struck him in the head were shot from 2 different rifles based on the shell casings found at the site. They also noted that no one in the crowd even tried to reach out for help for Ken while he lay dying in his truck.
No.
And no one helped Trina either, for that matter. They didn't help her get to a phone. Nobody was in any hurry to make an emergency call, to get an ambulance, to get anybody to come out to help either of them. By the time the sheriff and the deputies got out there, Ken was already dead. So there was no need for an ambulance. It wasn't going to do any good.
No. Nothing you can do at that point.
So there are some rumors, right, that have swirled around over the years. One rumor is that the owner of the tavern was one of the shooters.
Yeah. That's a pretty big rumor. That sticks out there a lot when you research this case.
But nothing ever came from it,
Nope.
right? It's just a rumor.
Just a rumor.
Eventually, the feds came in and they looked into this case as well, but they ran into the same problem. There was just no one in the community that was willing to come forward and identify the shooter or shooters.
No, they weren't going to do it. It wasn't going to happen. Whatever this bond that this town decided to make that day,
They stuck with it.
they stuck with it.
On July 9th, 1984, Trina McElroy filed a $6 million wrongful death lawsuit against the town of Skidmore and the county of Nodaway and some others that she thought were involved in her husband's death. The case was settled out of court by all parties for the sum of $17,600.
Wow. That's like here, we're going to pay this to it's cheaper to do this than to take it to trial.
Than to keep having to show up at court.
Yeah.
And we don't know who paid what, but to go from a $6 million suit down to essentially $17,000.
Tells you there wasn't really much there.
Trina remarried and later moved to Lebanon, Missouri, where she died of cancer on her 55th birthday on January 24th, 2012. And Gibbs, this is, it's a case unlike, I think, any other that we've ever covered.
Right.
When it comes to unsolved. Obviously, it remains unsolved, and it will always remain unsolved unless somebody comes forward and says what they know. Unlike a lot of cases, I don't think that will ever happen.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And even if it did, if someone said, hey, that was my dad that shot him the one shot, because there was 3 shots, 2 hit his head. Not sure which shot killed him. So did he really kill him, or he's just one of the shooters?
And this case is so old that most likely whoever did fire some of these shots,
Oh yeah,
they may already have passed away.
sure.
But I think the other reason why this case is so unique, almost always when you and I are talking about these unsolved cases, we're talking about victims who are really good people.
Yeah.
Often young, have their whole lives ahead of them. That couldn't be further from the truth when you talk about Ken McElroy. Number one, he didn't have his whole life ahead of him, but nobody liked this guy. He wasn't loved by throngs of people. In fact, it was the opposite.
They were afraid of him.
Almost everyone that knew him, probably outside of his family, they loathed him.
Yeah.
They were sick and tired of him because he was a bully, he threatened people, and he had, essentially gotten away with so many different crimes over the years.
Yep.
it just got to the point where I think everybody in town said, you know what? We've had enough of it.
Right. We don't want to see this guy around here anymore. We're tired of it. We're tired of being intimidated.
The justice system has not taken care of us to protect us from this man who is obviously a menace to society.
Right.
So this is the day. We're going to take the law into our own hands. I'm not saying it's right, but I'm saying this is essentially what happened. A group of people banded together and said, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
You grab your rifles.
Yep.
You're going to be the shooters. Nobody that knows anything about this will ever say a word.
And nobody's ever going to know who killed him because you're all three shooting at the same time. One of you are going to kill them. The rest of you, so we can never point back to who actually did it.
Yeah. It's just a very fascinating case. Now, this guy was a kind of a POS.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody would argue that. I still don't think he deserved to die, but like I said, I think it just got to the point where, these folks in the community said, well, we think he does.
Yeah. Yeah.
And obviously somebody made that decision. And it wasn't 1, 2, or 3 people. It was 10, 20, 30, 40 people. However many were there, they all had to agree that, okay, nobody's going to give up the shooter or shooters. And that is kind of the amazing part about it. For that many people to keep a secret.
Right.
That's kind of amazing.
It is. It really is. And also, when we were doing the research, I found that Trina sold the movie rights, made some money on that too. Not a lot of money, not like you would think, but she made some, a little bit.
Did they make a movie?
I guess they did. Yeah. They made a movie out of it. I can't remember the name of the movie. And there's some books written about it as well.
Shocking that you can't remember the name of the movie.
No, I cannot.
I'm sure it's not like DiCaprio was going to play
no.
Ken McElroy or anything like that. But it's an interesting case.
Yeah.
I found it fascinating. This kind of mob mentality from a group that had essentially cowered.
Yeah.
And been afraid of this guy for so long that they said, you know what? It ends today. And they did what they felt like they had to do, I guess.
I think they all slept better at night, which is hard to think that somebody could do that. But, when you're being terrorized
But that's it. That's it for the case of the murder of Ken McElroy. Gibbs, we've got some voicemails. You want to check those out?
Yeah, let's hear them.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. This is Michelle calling from Burlington, Connecticut. Again, just listen to the Chen family massacre on Unsolved. Really fascinating case. It was really interesting because I heard the part about how the victims had iPhones and Apple had initially refused to allow law enforcement to have access to those records. My daughter is in the middle of writing a paper for college regarding Apple and Siri and security breaches. So we were able to find an article regarding that case and add that to our research paper. So it was very helpful. So appreciate that. Timing was awesome. Thanks for all you guys are doing. Really help keeping us all distracted during this pandemic and quarantine. So just keep up the great work. Love you guys. Keep your own time ticking. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much. And Gibbs, who knew that you and I would ever help somebody write their research paper?
I always knew.
Or give them ideas, at least. You always knew.
They reached out and wanted me to proof it.
Oh.
Make sure the grammar was correct, which I did.
You put it through Grammarly, and Grammarly said, we don't even know what to make of this because your writing is so bad.
Right. Are you sure this is the language you're looking for? You want English? Because it's not written like it would be English.
The spell check, the Grammarly, those type of things, they don't work with you.
They don't, actually.
Because you have to at least be in the ballpark.
Yeah.
For, some of these apps and things to work.
So my Grammarly, you can, when you first sign up, you can check that box that it will give Grammarly feedback and help them make their product better.
Yeah.
They actually reached out and say, we need you to go back in and check that. I'm like, oh, wow. Okay.
Because we're getting feedback that nobody can decipher.
Right.
And you're actually making the product worse. For everybody else.
Hi,
Hi, Mike and Gibby. This is Nadia from a small town in Arkansas. I just wanted to say how much I love your guys' show. I have listened to all of True Crime All the Time Unsolved and the original, and I just love them all. I only recently got into podcasts, so it actually took me a while to find podcasts where I liked the people's voices, and you guys are definitely my favorite by far. I did want to say that when I first started listening, and I still think this now, but it really stood out to me that you guys reminded me a lot of I don't know if you remember this show, but on NPR there was a show called Car Talk, and it had two brothers, and their names were Click and Clack, and my mother used to listen to it in the car all the time. And so listening to you guys reminds me a lot of Click and Clack, and I just wanted to let you guys know that you guys are just like them, and I thought you're even funnier, actually. So, yeah, that's basically all I wanted to say. Thanks so much. Hope you guys are doing well, and keep your own time ticking.
That's funny that she realized that, because we actually were the original Click and Clack.
I don't remember that show.
No, I don't either.
But it's interesting how you can hear something, sometimes smell something, and it'll take you back.
Yeah.
To a point in time. There are things that trigger me. My grandmother, she used to buy these donuts, Gibbs, and they came in a box. They were frozen. Okay. They were just cake donuts, but you made them in the oven, and they were like the best donuts ever. They were like cake sugar donuts.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think they would be good because they were frozen in a box, but you put them in the oven.
Perfect.
They were amazing. And every now and then I'll smell something, and it'll take me back to being a kid in her kitchen making these donuts.
Yeah.
And that's such a cool feeling.
No.
Because, she's passed away, and, but now I'll think of that.
People are going to try to see if they can find those for you now.
I've looked. I just don't think they make them. They were probably made out of just straight lard. And
yeah,
they just probably don't make them anymore.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
Hi guys, I've been listening to your show for about a year now and love it. I work in Washington, D.C., and I live here. I'm originally from New York State, and I was wondering if you guys could do an episode in the Unsolved on the Long Island serial killer. It's a rare, really scary case. They discovered it around like 2011, 2012, and for anyone that lives out on Long Island or is from Long Island, it's a pretty scary case. It remains unsolved, and it takes place in the town of Oak Beach, which isn't far from Jones Beach, which is a popular beach spot in the New York City area. And that's it. Love you guys. You're awesome and funny. And, you never get too gross or weird, so you're almost a family show. Thanks. And that's it. You got a fan in DC. Take it easy, y'all.
Yeah, I appreciate that voicemail very much. I will say, Gibbs, Lisk is a huge case.
It really is.
And you and I have talked about it a number of times. I think that's a case that would take many episodes to cover. It might be the perfect 200 episode case.
Yeah, we're getting close.
We're closing in on it.
Right.
But I do think it is one of the bigger unsolved cases. I mean, you're getting into the area of Zodiac and what was, or back then, the Golden State Killer before they identified him. But we'll definitely do it. It's just one of those that really takes a lot of time, because you have to research and kind of put everything together for what may be 3 or 4 episodes.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Hey, Mike. Hey, Gibby. It's Kelly here, calling you from Canada. I'm just calling to say hello and to let you know I've been binge watching True Crime All the Time Unsolved now. I'm a big TCAT fan, and I've recently started doing the did I say watching, because I meant listening to TCAT Unsolved, and I got the Stitcher Premium, so I'm getting all the old episodes, and it's actually really great. I've been painting a house all week up here in Collingwood during the lockdown or the quarantine time. I had the advantage of having this whole place to myself. So your podcast is making my days just absolutely fly by. You're making work really enjoyable. So just wanted to say thank you, and I guess stay safe. Keep your own time ticking.
We love it, Gibbs, when people who don't normally listen to Unsolved switch over, which we always appreciate. And he got the Stitcher Premium, so gets to go back and listen from episode 1. Man, I'll tell you, when you switch over, there's a lot of episodes.
There is.
Or when you find us, all right? I mean, a lot of people have said that before. If you've never listened to any of our podcasts and you all of a sudden find it and you like it, between TCAT and Unsolved, I mean, you're looking at what now? 340 some episodes?
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Add Patreon on top of that, man. And there's 20 some episodes right there too.
Yeah. Plus all the weekly videos and things that we do. So, but we appreciate it.
We do.
Yeah. We love it when people reach out and say, hey, found you, love the show, love what you're doing. That's always nice. But that's it, Gibbs. That's it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.